Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I took a little bit of time off from BookTube because I've been moving, and I still am moving. Actually, I'm not completely situated in my new apartment, but it's been a lot for me to work 4 jobs, try to find 1 job, and move. So I appreciate those who are still subscribed and for everybody who's been supporting me. But yeah, let's get into the video. So I thought I'd do a book haul because I have been buying a lot of books lately, which is not something that I usually do. This is because I'm moving to Boston and I've been checking out, what kind of groups I could be a part of, what places I might want to visit, where I could possibly make friends. Yeah. So I was looking up places and I found the Lucy Parsons Center, which is in the Jamaica Plains area of Boston. And I've been trying to find spaces that were progressive or leftist, or had some history books that focused on topics that I wanted to learn more about, and had some regional history. So I had my eye on Lucy Parsons Center for a while. I think they do events there as well, which is nice. I'd love to go to one of those. It's my dream. Well, it's a recent dream that I thought of this summer, but I mean, I've always loved collectives, and when I lived in DC, there was one space in particular that just opened my eyes to like the possibilities, to a way that a space could operate, promoting art, vegan food, yoga classes, everything, and it was just wonderful. It was called Femme Fatale, and so a dream that I recently had was to open up my own space where artists of all kinds could sell things, and classes could happen, and events could happen, and there would also be books. It would be nice if it could function in the way that a library does. And I love libraries. I work at a library now because of all of like the social services they provide, and the fact that they provide all these wonderful things for people to take out. And I'd love to have a space like that as well. So I went to Lucy Parsons Center. I went there in June, so they had everything from a display about LGBTQ books and history, to local Boston history, to world history, to poetry. The list goes on. That's just some of the things. But these were the 3 books that I picked up. So I've been wanting to read a biography of a radical woman for a while. I've just been in the mood, and I have a few people like on my list that I'd like to read specifically, but when I was there, I picked up Lucy Parsons, an American revolutionary, because if this wonderful space existed, I wanted to know like who it was named after. I found it interesting that it wasn't like a regional person, but this says, described by the Chicago police as more dangerous than 1,000 rioters, Lucy Parsons remains one of the most fascinating figures in U.S. history. As a mixed-race woman in Texas, likely born enslaved, Parsons became one of the most militant leaders in the radical labor movement at the turn of the century. And actually, I don't know a lot about the labor movement, and I would love to learn more. Not one I was expecting to grab, but one that I'm excited for. So the next book was also an impulse buy. I didn't expect to get a book about theory, but I picked up As Black as Resistance by Zoe Zanuzzi and William C. Anderson. Really, I bought this mostly because I follow Zoe on Twitter, and I've learned so much from doing so. This book says we must understand how anti-blackness shapes the contours and logics of European colonialism and its many legacies, to the extent that blackness and citizenship are exclusive categories. So there's that. But it also says, and this is something I'm very interested in, As Black as Resistance makes the case for a new program of self-defense and transformative politics for Black Americans, one rooted in an anachronistic framework that the authors liken to the Black experience itself. This book argues against compromise and negotiation with intolerance. It is a manifesto for everyone who is ready to continue progressing towards liberation. So, sounds good to me. And I really went there looking for a book about Boston history. Actually, I was looking for something to do with slavery and abolition or women's movement. The 1800s are really an era that I love, but I actually ended up leaving with this book, which is Chain of Change, Struggles for Black Community Development by Mel King. And it is a history of the Black community in Boston from the 50s to the 70s. Mel King shows how Black consciousness and power have developed through the struggles around jobs, housing, education, and politics. It's good because I don't read as much from this era, and I'm really interested to hear what Mel has to say. So those are the 3 books I ended up getting from the Lucy Parsons Center. So the next 2 books were a happy accident because I was actually buying some books for my aunt for her 60th birthday because we had a big celebration, just went out to dinner. It was really nice, but yeah, I entered the Wesleyan Bookstore and I just picked up 2 things that caught my eye. So the first is Dear Senthuran by Kweki. Basically, I decided that I love Kweki, even though I've only read The Death of Eva OG. But I have fresh water and I'm planning to read that within the week. And now I have Dear Senthuran. I mean, it says on this, Kweki parts the seas of the South, which is pretty chill. So this is kind of a memoir, autobiography type book, if I am understanding this correctly. Now, in this extraordinary memoir, the best-selling author of The Death of Eva OG reveals the harrowing yet resolute truths of their own life. Through candid, intimate correspondence with friends, lovers, and family, Emezi traces the unfolding of a self and the unforgettable journey of a creative spirit stepping into power in the human world. So yes, I'm excited for things about gender and body, and it should be wonderful. Next, I picked up Pieces by Helen Oyeyemi. Is there an author working today who's comparable to Helen Oyeyemi? And then gloriously unsettling. So whenever anything is described as gloriously unsettling, I need to read it. One of my friends was a fan of this author, so I decided to check her out. And I read White for Witching last year, and I just loved that book. I loved the creepiness. One of my favorite tropes is any book that is about women and monstrosity. So I waited a bit to pick this up because I wasn't sure about the plot. It was about like 2 people on a train, but then I read their trip on this former tea smuggling train has been curated beyond their wildest imaginations, complete with mysterious and welcoming touches like ingredients for their favorite breakfast. They seem to be the only people on board until Otto discovers a secretive woman who has a surprising message. And then later on it says, Pieces is about what it means to be seen by another person, whether it's your lover or a stranger on a train, and what happens when things you thought were firmly in the past turn out to be right beside you. So that part was what interested me. The last bookstore I visited in the flesh was People Get Ready in New Haven, Connecticut. They are just amazing. I was in there for like an hour browsing because I ordered some books in advance, and then I bought a few while I was there, and I just took a picture of 50 books that I really wanted to read, and somehow I chose only 2 to buy, but it's such a lovely place. So I finally decided to visit and buy some books in June when I had a big old gay TBR and I was doing all these queer readathons. And of course, the library, they have some books about queer history, but the ones I wanted to read were very specific. So the first is Sexuality and Socialism, History and Politics and Theory of LGBTQ Liberation. If you watched my last video, I kind of talked about how I was part of a queer socialism book club, and this was like all virtual during the pandemic, and we had read a few chapters from this book, which is so important, so I wanted to keep reading from it. I'm always trying to learn more about socialism because I don't really know that much, but yeah. And then the other one was called Transgender History, The Roots of Today's Revolution by Susan Stryker. Yeah, I just wanted to pick a all-encompassing book, and then that way, like, getting overarching knowledge about trans history, I could pick like specific individuals or regions or like topics that I found interesting and like read further from there. But I thought I'd start with this. Also, I was just having like a lovely purple vibe here apparently. Then I went inside and I bought Mouths of Rain, which is an anthology of Black lesbian thought. It's edited by Brianna Simone Jones, and this is one of my books that I was looking forward to that came out this year. I think I've only seen like one person read it, so I'm excited. It sounds like there will be anything from just like writing about Black lesbianism to how the word lesbian is a political descriptor that disrupts and critiques capitalism, heterosexism, and heteropatriarchy. So I'm sure I will have a lot to say about all of the specific essays collected here, but it's hard to really say more than that until I read all of them. And then I got Love After the End, an anthology of two-spirit and indigiqueer speculative fiction, edited by Joshua Whitehead. Speculative fiction is one of my favorite genres. I think I've seen Sage from Sage Reads talk about this. So it says, these visionary authors show how queer indigenous communities can bloom and thrive through utopian narratives that detail the vivacity and enduring strength of two-spirit queerness, 2SQness, throughout its plight in the maw of settler colonialism's histories. Readers will discover bioengineered AI rats, transplanted trees in space, the rise of a two-spirit queer resistance camp, a primer on how to survive indigiqueerly, virtual reality application, motherships at sea, in the very bending of space and time continuums queered through NDM time. Sounds great. So these are the two that I bought. I found this website called like Thrift Books or something. I'll put it down below and I'll put my code, because if you like click my code and sign up, then like we both get like discounts or something. So there you go. I'm not an influencer by any means. A bookfluencer, is that a term? But it's there. They sell used and new books, and I haven't done a ton of used book shopping, but I did feel like, oh, like I know I want specific books, they're just not in bookstores, or if they are, they're like really expensive. So it's not just like a random browse and see in a used bookstore thing. I went on there and I found 2 more Boston history books. They're like super short, so even if like I don't enjoy it, I'll blink and I'll be done. So the first is Boston Abolitionists by Carrie Greenidge. That name sounds super familiar to me. I don't know why. It may just be like my line of work. Like I've heard that scholar before or something. Either way, I've had some seeds planted of like really cool people in Boston that were abolitionists. So I'm hoping that this book tells me more. And then the second one is Boston and the Civil War, the hub of the Second Revolution. I'm sure this will have some overlap with the other book and talk about abolitionists in Boston. And we'll probably talk about like Black Bostonians fighting in the Civil War. I'm hoping that it talks about the industry of slavery and the pushback of people that were pro-slavery, because where I am now, I understand how different like daily aspects of life were dependent on slavery. Were you drinking rum? Were you eating sugar? Were you wearing like clothing? Were you building a ship as like the person at the historic house that I work at was? Were you sending horses down to the Caribbean that were aiding in that work? Everything is just so interconnected. And I'd love to see how that manifested in Boston. I don't know if it'll be in a book about the Civil War, but that would be cool. I'm still interested more in how society was affected by war than learning like the history of the battles itself. So I'm hoping that this book covers that. Next we have Motor Crush. I just saw this like amazingly badass cover and I've wanted to read this ever since. I've been having a pretty good success with my enjoyment of all the queer comics that I've seen recommended on BookTube and that I've been picking up. So this says, welcome to the beautiful Nova Honda, the racing capital of the world, home of the prestigious World Grand Prix, the illegal street race, the cannonball, and the racer caught between both of them, Domino Swift. Domino Swift is a pretty fucking badass name, and I am so excited. I don't really know what to say more than that, except like, if you know, you know. That was like an auto buy for me. So we'll see how it is. I think there's more than one volume too, so I'll definitely try to pick that up if I enjoy it. The last one is The Devourers by Indra Das. I think I saw Sunny with a Chance talking about this book, so I'm gonna start like midway through the synopsis. What it says: Alak agrees at the stranger's behest to transcribe a collection of battered notebooks, weathered parchments, and once living skins. From these documents flows the chronicle of a race of people at once more human, yet kin to beasts, ruled by instincts and desires blood deep and ages old. The tale features a rough wanderer in 17th century Mughal India who finds himself irrevocably drawn to a defiant woman and destined to be torn asunder by two clashing worlds. With every passing chapter of beauty and brutality, Alak's interest in the stranger grows and evolves into something darker and more urgent. So yes, the cover is captivating, the description is captivating, and we will just have to see. So those are all the books that were a part of the haul. Thank you so much for watching. I am definitely going to film more videos soon so I can update on books I read in June, even though it's like the end of July, and I can update about books in July as well. And maybe do some reading vlogs. So yeah. Is there any book that you hauled recently that you're really looking forward to reading? Comment below and let me know so I can take a look. Bye!